Hi, and welcome to CryptoBiography. I'm your host, Brandon Starr. This is episode 248 of CryptoBiography, and it is part 14 of the Isle of Bronze. And here we go. A couple of minutes later, Theodora entered. She saw Nasramin and Hama, and seemed to understand immediately what was happening. "When did you learn?" she asked Nasramin. It was not proper etiquette, but Nasramin ignored this. "Last night. Hama says this has been going on for several weeks." "That's correct." "Hama has strong feelings for you. Is that how you feel about her? I will not be upset, no matter your answer." Theodora nodded and then said, "Yes, I love her." Nasramin motioned for her to sit next to Hama. Once she had, he said, "If this was a matter only between the two of you, then I would simply congratulate you, and that would be that. As it is, however, other people, and indeed other powers, are involved. Have you talked with Shugo about this at all?" Both of them shook their heads. He addressed Theodora. "You've also been spending time with him. Has he shown interest in you, or talked about his Unity search?" "He has talked about his Unity search, but never with me as its goal. He showed some interest in me, but it always felt more like something he was expected to do rather than something he wanted to do. Of course, he may be bad at expressing his intentions or his feelings. We will have to confirm this with him. On Limos, the throne is only passed along patrilineally. On Limos, the throne is only passed along patrilineally. But I understand that's not true in Thebes, correct?" Theodore nodded. "Correct. The throne passes to the eldest male heir, if there is one, but if there is none, it goes to the eldest female, me. However, if I have a son, he would become the heir." "And you have no brothers?" "None that survived. One died shortly after birth, the other died less than a year ago, when a plague swept Thebes." Nasramin considered this. Thebans had never mentioned this fact before, possibly to keep the weakness of their position hidden. Mersili had never mentioned it to him. He wondered why his spies hadn't brought that information to him. Perhaps it had happened too recently, but still, given the importance of any information about Thebes had gained, it was a bit troubling. He also wondered if news of the plague had reached Assyria and made them decide the time was ripe for an invasion. But that was all for later. Now he had to deal with the situation. "If Shugo is amenable to it, would you marry him?" "That depends on the rest of the situation. Somehow, though, I doubt he would be thrilled to share his wife with his sister." Much can be borne when power comes into the picture." "I know that, O king," Theodore said it with a rueful smile. "Are you going to tell Shugo about us?" "If I don't and you marry, but also stay with Hama, it would be an antlion waiting to spring its trap. Someday, somehow, he would find out, and then there would be anger and resentment and misery. But if he knew and approved some version of it, then you could live ethically. This could be either a marriage of political convenience or perhaps a marriage of friendship. Either way, heirs could be produced, and yet you could remain on good terms with both Shugo and Hama." He left the sexual situation deliberately vague, but he was sure she got the idea. She could potentially have Hama and still do what she needed to for Thebes. Of course, if the marriage didn't happen, she undoubtedly would have to go back to Thebes soon. Would Hama demand to follow her? He didn't know. "I see no reason to wait. There are too many other things to deal with, and we can take care of this today." Nasramin stood and went to the door. He spoke to one of his people outside, then closed it, and they waited. None of them spoke for a few minutes, until Shugo entered. He looked at the three of them, glanced quickly to see no one else was in the room, then closed the door. He had clearly read something in their silence and their faces. "What is going on, Father?" Nasramin gestured for him to sit next to him. As soon as he did, Nasramin said, "Son, this is earlier than you will have expected, but we need to know how you feel about Theodora, and you cannot prevaricate with us or even with yourself. You see, she and Hama, they have fallen in love. And you have also spent time with Theodora. She's not sure how you feel about her." Hugo shifted as though about to speak, but Nasramin held up a hand. "She likes you, and as she is expected to marry royalty for the benefit of Thebes, if you ask, she will marry you, as long as you do not force her and Hama apart. Thus, much depends on what you do next. Will you marry Theodora? I'm sure she would allow you to bed other women, or you could find someone else during your unity search, in which case Theodora would almost certainly have to return to Thebes, and Hama likely would go with her." "May I please have time to think this over?" Hugo said. "Yes," Nasramin said. "Thank you," Hugo said, and stood up abruptly. He hurried for the door, bumping the table on the way out. "That went as well as I could have expected," Nasramin said. "May we go?" Hama asked him. He had nothing else to ask them. "Certainly," he said. He went back to his chambers and saw Mawaya was up. He told her the events of the morning and of the night before. "I wanted especially my talk with Hama to not come across as a pressure situation, more than it naturally would." He could tell Mawaya would rather have been there, but she said, "It sounds like it went reasonably well. I will check in with Hama and Theodora and Hugo as well later." He helped her out of bed and they went to eat, back in the same room that he had just met with them all. The meal was a quiet one. Asasi, who had not been at the meeting at all, was looking around and seemed to wonder why everyone was being quiet, but did not ask about the unusual mood in the room. Nasramin wasn't sure if he had other matters that he cared about more, or if he was planning to ask one of his siblings later. He spent the day mostly with Mersili, going over the improvements to their defenses and starting to prepare for the plan Mawaya laid out, giving information to various leaders across their island. The day went by very quickly, and by the end of it, he and Mersili had planned enough that they had called for the initial meetings to start in 2 days. And that's the episode for this week. Hope you're enjoying it. I am still enjoying writing it, and if you have any comments or questions about this episode or previous episodes, cryptobiography@gmail.com, or hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, and thank you for listening. Words and music copyright 2022 CryptoBiography LLC, all rights reserved. Characters and events are fictional, fictionalized, or satirical.